Hi, everyone. I'm Diana. I'll be talking about my journey with using AI and building the London Improv Calendar. So a little bit about me. I'm a serverless consultant. I specialized in AWS, and I've been working on backends since 2010, but specifically with Lambda since about 2016. My main area of focus has been backend, though very rarely I touched front-end, but very early. If you remember ASP.NET MVC 2 and 3, that's what I've been, that's my experience in that. So not that much. A talk outline. First, we'll understand why I felt like I had to build the calendar, how I came to do that, the plan, the challenge, how I chose the tech stack, some case studies, some were thoughts about its limitations and quirks, tips and tricks for how to work with it, and finally a quick look at the actual result, the tool for the community. Some things to know off the bat. Prompt examples are paraphrased. And when I say that AI suggests solutions, it is usually part of a conversation rather than an answer to a prompt, because it may take multiple prompts to accurately describe the problem or the constraints. This talk is not a comparison of AI tools. I mostly use VS Code with GitHub Copilot and chat UIs of OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic. And it's not a comparison of LLMs. I did switch models frequently, but didn't evaluate them, not comprehensively. So, why was a calendar needed? So, the story is that in November 2024, I got temporarily banned by an improv school without warning because a respectful email to an instructor had made them uncomfortable. You know, I didn't contest it because I wasn't told exactly what was wrong, but, you know, fine. People are sensitive. Okay, fine. But it was framed as a temporary. So I insisted on defining temporary because it affected my participation in the improv community, my planning, my access to opportunities. So someone in readership replied to an email that offering such clarity would likely result in a permanent exclusion. That is a quote from an email. Yeah, so that stunned me. So what do you do with this? What did I do? I emailed the internal student liaison about the language, and I haven't received a reply for about 3 weeks. I escalated to a second person in leadership that dismissed the language as unintentional, and I was told that the ban was for 1 year and that I should check back after 1 year if I can be allowed back. But again, no criteria was given for how I might come back. I raised a formal complaint about the language finally in December, and I'm still waiting for a reply. And ironically, I'm banned for an email while my complaint about an email is still pending. Right. So I couldn't really go back after that. How do I find improv? It's scattered everywhere. Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, meeting sites. How about I use a calendar to track them all? I could share it with people. They could even add events that I don't know about. So I came up with a plan. It's going to be a public website. Anyone can add events, a calendar, and strictly for London Improv, just to keep it focused. The challenge was that I was a solo developer with a backend specialty, like I mentioned at the beginning. All I've done was basically backend. Brand new front-end stack. Limited hours, I was doing part-time and over the holidays. But what I knew was, well, I had the experience of the AWS serverless stack. I kind of knew what clean code tends to look like. That absolute positioning generally is a bad idea. I understood the value of creating a task list, organizing it into must-have, nice-to-have, working through itemized bits of work. I knew that GitHub was useful for tracking changes. I kind of knew what the project wanted to look. I wanted to look like, and also what was realistic technique. Copy pasting. It's a very underrated skill. A little bit about how my workflow evolved, but first I'll explain how I chose the front-end stack. I had a chat about strategy with AI, so I told it that I was looking to build a simple website with calendar, that I knew Node.js and TypeScript, and asked if there were any nice components that I could use, something that has colors and possibility of filtering. Told it not to worry about ideas first. So AI, this was GPT-4o in December 24. AI laid out the pros and cons of React and Svelte and 4 other front-end frameworks and explained why React's ecosystem Vite would be a good fit for my S3 hosted website. And it recommended a library called Full Calendar as a component to start with. Now, this could have been days of research and comparing frameworks. It didn't make the decision for me, but it gave me enough data to make an informed one, so I had a starting point. So, how the conversation evolved. In my early days, in early December, I was basically copy-pasting in chat UIs with, as I mentioned, Google AIs, Anthropics, and Open AIs, UIs. Basically, it was copy-pasting from VS Code. It worked. It was slow, and the AI didn't really have project context. I found Copilot in VS Code, and I could now reference the files I wanted in context. So no more copy-pasting. For small changes, that helped. And in February, I found a feature called the workspace feature. You can use that in VS Code. So I could have a conversation about my entire project. And I could ask it to suggest changes, and I could keep talking about the code and understand it until I could get it to generate what I wanted. Ask it how features were implemented and how things could improve at a code base level. In March, I found, I don't remember if that's when I found them or that's when they were introduced. They were Copilot instructions, which is basically text files in your project. I could instruct AI before even giving any prompts. I could tell it about my preferences in coding style. So as models improved from at the time of 3 mini, you will have 04 now, 4.5. But with improved models, I was more confident in asking for large files. And for complex questions, I still found the need to go to chat UI. I still had some copy-pasting to do. Because at the time, for instance, 03 mini high was not available, and VS Code. So what that looked like in VS Code is pretty much like this. You'll see the Copilot chat window on the right. And this is what it looks like when I ask it a question about the workspace. So I'm asking it how it might change the code to add a query string parameter to all external links. So you'll see that it shows it's searching through the code. It's using these query strings, specific ones. You can see what files it read. And then it provides code that you can simply apply to your own code. So what that would look like was this. And you also get to review the changes as a diff, which I find very useful. So something I found fascinating. So when I asked AI, what I asked of AI depended on my level of skill with tech. As a high-level architect on the back end, some things, and as an apprentice on the front end, I would ask it other stuff. For example, I knew on the back end, I knew what good looked like, and I could confidently delegate the boilerplate. So as one example, this is where I ask it to add a Dynamo table I named X, grant read permissions to the list and get lambdas, write permissions to the create and update lambdas, and also ask it to add a couple of GSIs over some fields and make sure the lambdas have names as environment variables. So very declarative. Whereas on the front end, I would paste React code and ask it things like, how do I add a button that says, I just want a random word and is aligned to the right of this other button? And for now, just log to the console that it's being clicked. So it's very oriented towards learning the basics. Similarly, my validation strategy differed. On the back end, I was reviewing whether the generated code was correct, whether it followed best practices, whether the tests were readable and they covered proper functionality. On the front end, I was more like a tester. And did it look like I wanted it to look? Does it behave like I expected it to? And did it work on my phone? I would often follow up and ask, is the solution clean code, to get a second layer of validation? As, again, front end was not my specialty. I needed more input into this. Quick look at, I decided to build a random word generator because I wanted event creation to be easy. So basically, you'd have this simple form with a few details about the event. And I wanted to use a system inspired by improv. So basically, you create your event, and you're given a random word. If you then want to edit your event or delete it, you must use the random word that you were given when the event was created. And the reCAPTCHA prevents automated scripts from having a go. I couldn't rely on chance JS. Turns out chance generates nonsense words from syllables. And other random word libraries just had few words, and I didn't find them interesting. So I had to build my own. With the help of AI, I'm sorry. With the help of AI, I found libraries of some 300,000 words, which I felt was big enough. But I was also looking for something that had word frequencies. I could ask for common, rare words, rarer words, something that I found useful in improv. So it guided me towards something called Subtlex UK. It's a corpus of words from TV subtitles. It's free, online, has word frequencies, about 160,000 words. I thought it was good enough. Okay, so you could you could see it on this website. I could check it out. You've got the word there. You've got the frequency there, and the part of speech. Thank you. You could see this part of speech. So noun, adverbs. But I found in one issue, it also had words that were not really English words. Yeah, so I went back to AI. I asked what tools are best for filtering out non-English words. It suggested a Python and wrote a script. It used NLP to check words, which was very helpful to me. So then I wanted help figuring out how to categorize frequency. So I described the problem. I'm using this file, so I gave it the CSV file as the database for a random word generator, word frequency. And I wanted the generator to have the option to select any out of a list of predetermined frequencies. So I thought 4. So very common, common, uncommon, and rare. I asked it to help me figure out how to define the values of frequencies for each category. So I was using the integrated chat of OpenAI, and it got a tool that allows it to run Python scripts. So what I did is it actually looked at the CSV I uploaded. It used pandas to do that. And it analyzed frequency stats. Now, I didn't need to understand exactly what it did, but I could check its output. So I found that I pushed back. Why did you pick those percentiles? It feels like there are some less common words in the very common category. Okay, so I thought, okay, it would consider an alternative that better captures the intuitive boundaries of common and rare. The word intuitive. Yeah, I'm amazed that it can do that still. So it thought to visualize the distribution of word frequencies first. It saw that the histogram reveals a skewed distribution with most words concentrated. This is what it said. It could also understand the visualizations that it generated, which was great. So these are the initial boundaries it had suggested that I thought weren't good enough. And this is the following suggestion. And I checked the list of words again, and the split this time looked fine to me. So I decided to make the random word a feature of the site, since it's also very useful in improv. It can also make people come back to the site if they're not even looking for an event. It kind of looks like this. So you've got the word, and if it's a noun or another part of speech, and its frequency. And you can also select what you want to get out of it. So, as a few takeaways, AI helped find the Subtlex UK and filter it. I don't think I could have done it as easily. I couldn't have found it as easily as without AI. It used Python in its integrated code runner to analyze data and suggest solutions, and it really accelerated the development of complex data-driven features. So basically, my initial prompt was kind of high level. I described the content that general was going for. So I referenced the workspace as I have a look at the whole project. So I said, I want to add an on-hover panel that shows up whenever an event in the calendar is hovered on. I want it to have a style like the rest of the app. It's like professional minimalist. There's a few keywords that might help. So the first attempt was this. You can see that this is what's being covered on. this is where the hover panel is, and the date is undefined. Okay. So I told it, some issues with the implementation. Can you spot what's wrong based on the screenshot? And I actually gave it the screenshot. It fixed the invalid date, but it didn't spot the positioning issue. So I told it to fix the position on the panel and move it closer to the element the mouse hovers on. So its first attempt at a position fixed didn't do anything visible. Then I also noticed that it clipped the panel when it was outside the calendar, and I gave it this information as well. So it figured it was wrong. It suggested a more sophisticated solution using a React from the parent overflow. I had no idea what React portals are until then. Now, yeah, I know they're a thing. It also thought about something I hadn't, but I would have found it probably testing. It anticipated what happens when the panel is near the edge of the screen, and it built logic to flip its position. Okay, so it doesn't still say quite much, this hover panel, so I wanted to make it pretty. So I said, I want to improve the aspect of the hover panel, and I asked it to look at how styles are used across the project and suggest something that fits well. So this is the before, and this is what it did after. Didn't change much. It used a card component like other places had, but visually, no, not much of a difference. So I insisted, told it looks bland, to have a look at the rest of the code to try to make it look nicer. So again, the before and the after. So it improved. It added a couple of icons and a colorful edge that matched the event. That. So prompts like make it pretty weren't clear enough. So let's be more specific. I said format the date so it matches the format in other places. Make it bigger so that the title doesn't cut off so quickly. Add a very brief version of the first X characters. I did not define X. Add colors for burrow and tube, like in list view. I attached a screenshot of the colors of the burrow and the tube info in list view. So that would be the sample screenshot. Again, the before and after. So that I found that much nicer. It did what I had asked it to do. So I was curious if I could get any better results or nicer ideas if I retried that. Let's see. I didn't, but thankfully I saved the initial solution. So my role was to try the final polish. I changed the date format, basic positioning of the hover panel. A few steps, like I said, get the command. So it took more prompts to get the final result. Make it pretty wasn't sufficient, so I had to update to give it more. It can be a creative panel that impressed me and the anticipating of UI needs at the screen's edge. And my role mostly there was quality control. I couldn't have come up with the React panel fix because I didn't know what that was. But I could test and validate and curate the best outputs. So I learned to git commit good results immediately because as I is not deterministic, I might not have gotten the same result with further attempts. Looking at the way in which it solved another problem, a bug was reported by a user that Barnet wasn't in London. So I asked AI. So I told it, I'm using this regex to see if a postcode is in London. I like to make sure it also handles some more postcodes, like one in High Barnet, which is thought of as in London, as it's within the M25. That was my conception of London at the time. So I asked, how could I improve my check? So I came up with 3 solutions. I could update the regex. That was a quick fix. Or I could use an API check, call postcodes.io, and check if region is in London, which sounds great. Or I could just define London however I wanted it and get the GPS coordinates and see if they're within a boundary box that I defined, which, excellent. I could define whatever zone I wanted and say, are events in this space? But for simplicity, I went with the solution of the API check. So I'll have a quick look at the architecture of the London Improv Calendar to give you an idea. The bits in orange were developed after the release of the MVP. It's a very high-level view. These are the lambdas that are doing API stuff like create, edit, list, subscribe, getting a random word. There's a Dynamo table of calendar events which streams any changes to a lambda, which then converts them to create updated, deleted events and put them onto a topic. 4 other lambdas subscribe to the topic with various roles. From one sends telegrams about changes in events. Another pushes them to Google Calendar. Another lambda re-indexes them. And a final one pre-renders them, pre-renders the HTML for SEO. There's also a lambda that subscribes to CloudWatch alarm and sends me Telegram messages if anything goes wrong. Quick look at costs. So I have fixed Route 53 costs every month, regardless of what I do. This DNS and all of that. That's $0.5 a month. There is a tax on top of that. And then there was just one day in January where I turned on API gateway caching for like a day, and then quickly turned it back off when I saw the billing forecast. In February, I ran into SQS polling costs. So starting to get out of control. They had reached almost $1 on their own. So initially, I had the standard serverless pattern of an SNS topic publishing to SQS, and then Lambda would poll that queue to process messages. It's great for durability, but the polling cost, and it's very easy to exceed free tier. So a handful of Lambdas subscribed to SQS, that did it for me. That has exceeded the free tier. So again, AI, how can I make this polling cheaper? It guided through configuring polling time, batch size, wait time to reduce the number of requests, which didn't help much. And then it suggested a simpler architecture, having the SNS invoke the Lambda directly. Now, I'd lose the buffering and fine-grained retry that SQS has, but for my use case, I didn't need them. So I stayed with SNS to Lambda. That covered SQS polling costs, leaving only fixed months costs, scaling costs. Sorry, so that covered SQS costs. Okay. Only leaving scaling costs, the tax, and the fixed monthly cost. In total, about $1 a month for both staging and prod. It's pretty cool. Talk a little bit about AI limitations. So first of all, it can suggest wrong code. Like, I would frequently get compilation errors, especially at the start with models like GPT-4o. It would generate TypeScript that wouldn't compile on the first try, or use non-existent methods, or point to wrong file paths. It would frequently suggest AWS SDK v2 use v3, and prompted repeatedly to use v3. I included it in the system prompt. And it may confidently hallucinate. So once it was very sure that a change was compatible with the CloudFront function runtime, and no, it wasn't. Found that out the hard way. From an architectural point of view, it can overcomplicate simple tasks. So it may try to force a new feature into existing patterns, even when a simple, more direct approach is better. For a simple Telegram notifications, it muddied my event bus architecture instead of suggesting a direct, clean message. It's great at generating code, can forget surrounding pieces. So it correctly identified the code changes for a new feature, but forgot to grant IAM permissions, which I do that a lot as a human. So I thought they're getting it from someplace, from us, I guess. It can argue for a pattern to use it. So it strongly argued for using an environment variable for decoupling, and code it generated and use that. It's unpredictable. It may sometimes modify parts of a file that you didn't ask it to touch. So I had a change in a Lambda handler, and it also decided to change my text and emojis in the private messages I was sending myself. So for no reason at all. Do check the diffs. This is it changing notifications. There's an inconsistent coding style. So it varies between models and also between responses from one prompt to the other. And as I showed before, good ideas can vanish forever. A retry can make a good idea disappear, but it can also give you some other ideas. So commit good suggestions and keep exploring if you want. Few tips and tricks for working effectively. The main takeaway I would get from this is it's not a magic prompt, it's a set of strategies. First of all, provide clear direction. Don't tailor it to make it pretty. Give it screenshots and tell it to make it look like this. Manage its context. Focus chats for single features to avoid confusion. So keep changing chats whenever you change the features you're working on. And use tools like @Workspace for project-wide context. I think nowadays you can also use hashtag Codebase in VS Code. Get a pattern to follow. So you can show it an existing test or handler and say, make the new one follow the same structure. Keep exploring the solution space. Ask it what your options are. One example for me was API gateway caching, API caching. I asked it about what solutions might be possible for my project and suggested 5 of them based on my app scale. Challenge the first answer. Ask if it is the best way to do whatever you're asking it to do and push back on suggestions. I had some that used absolute positioning in the UI and set timeout. Now, I don't know much about front end, but I know that that's not a good idea. Compare and contrast. Try multiple LLMs for the same task, as you might get very different UI design decisions from different models. So, as one example of a validation issue solution, took 3 minutes of thinking and solved it in one go. Gemini was faster at the time. I think it was 2.0, but it took 5 tries and clunkier code. Trust what it's doing, but also verify, because you are the tester at the end of the day. And on the front end, I constantly checked whether it did what I asked and whether it looked right on mobile. Work in verifiable chunks. Ask it to do as much as you can check. A massive refactor is hard to validate. One Lambda is much easier. Check for code quality as well. Don't assume that the output is clean, and constantly ask it if the solution is clean code, especially with the context of the whole project. And ask it to write automated tests, and check that you can understand them and that they cover what you expect. I got it to write unit tests for the code I was generating. It did fine, covered lots of cases, but the code was repetitive, and it didn't suggest on its own to create helper methods, and I had to prompt it. So caveats there as well. Be mindful of your workflow. Automate tedious checks. One quick win that I found was to get the test runner to output results to a file and then asked AI to analyze the file instead of copy-pasting the failures in the console. Evolve your tooling. Like I said at the start, I started by copy-pasting, moved to integrated tools, and then to whole project conversations, and do use system prompts. And learn about your model's quirks. Claude can overcomplicate things, and Gemini can write too many comments, and prompt them accordingly. Finally, a question that I've been I'll leave up in the air because I've been wondering about it. Am I getting lazier by asking AI to do it all for me? So, for instance, create a PowerShell script which counts all the words in a file, comma separated. It does it, but then do it so I don't have to save a file, and it does that too. Whether that's lazy or efficient, question. So let's look at the London Improv Calendar. A calendar of improv events happening in London, so the name fits. AI also helps. This is what it looked like around the month of January. It took 1 month of development to release the MVP, and it looked like this on mobile. And this is today. It's quite a few more events. Let me zoom out. Yeah, so there's lots of improv happening in London every day. On mobile, the design also evolved since the launch of the MVP. There's now a search bar as well. So, as I was saying, anyone can add events. They must be public in London at a physical location, contain improv, and members of the site team should have the opportunity to attend unlisted events as long as they meet event requirements and pay any applicable fees. I added this rule to protect the integrity of the calendar, as I don't think it should have to promote events that the site team is excluded from. As for the improv school, in March, I told the story of the band to a third person in leadership face-to-face, and that I would talk about it in a tech talk. They said they would discuss it internally, but I haven't heard back. So yeah. One of the things I find amazing is that the project inspired others. So one particular example, I went to Edinburgh in March and met someone from Sweden who really liked the idea of the calendar. So they happened to look like in its first few months, but the design has changed very recently. This is what it looks like today. And this is Flopbox, recently launched, made by someone in the London Improv community who's also embedded in clowning groups. So this is an alternative comedy calendar. In conclusion, AI didn't just help me write code, it helped me transform an act of exclusion into a tool for the community. And it helped make coding fun again. Thank you very much.